In the absolute silence of space, where sound cannot travel and no human voice can reach, something appears to be watching Earth. It does not blink. It does not transmit greetings. It does not ask permission. It simply exists, suspended above our planet, moving with purpose, as if it has always been there. Long before satellites filled Earth's orbit, long before humanity learned how to leave its atmosphere, something strange was already circling our world. And the most disturbing part is not what it is, but how long it may have been there. This is the mystery known as the Black Knight satellite, a story that refuses to die, a shadow that follows humanity into the space age, and a question that challenges one of our deepest assumptions. Are we truly explorers of space, or are we being observed? For most of human history, the sky was not just a physical place. It was sacred, mysterious, and alive with meaning. Ancient civilizations across the world recorded strange objects in the heavens. Sumerian tablets spoke of watchers descending from the skies. Egyptian texts described glowing objects moving silently above the land. Medieval chronicles recorded sightings of dark shapes crossing the moon. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as myth, symbolism, or religious imagination. But history has a way of becoming unsettling when modern technology begins to confirm ancient fears. The Black Knight satellite sits precisely at the intersection of legend and science, where mythology stops being comfortable and starts becoming suspiciously specific. The modern chapter of this mystery begins in the late 1950s, during the height of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a deadly competition for technological dominance. Space had become the ultimate high ground. Every object in orbit mattered. Every unidentified signal was treated as a potential threat. Radar systems scanned the skies relentlessly, searching for enemy satellites, missiles, or anything that could shift the balance of power. It was in this climate of fear and obsession that radar operators began detecting something impossible. An object was orbiting Earth in a near-polar trajectory, a path that, at the time, no nation had the capability to achieve. No launch had been recorded. No government claimed ownership. And yet, the object was there, stable, persistent, and unmistakably artificial in its movement. At first, officials assumed it was a mistake. Radar errors were not uncommon. Reflections, atmospheric interference, and calibration issues could all create false positives. But this object kept appearing. Different systems detected it. Different operators confirmed it. The data matched. Whatever it wasn't a glitch. It wasn't debris drifting aimlessly. It was in orbit, behaving like a satellite, at a time when only a handful of primitive satellites even existed. The realization was deeply unsettling. If this object was not American and not Soviet, then who put it there? As whispers of the anomaly spread, journalists caught wind of the story. In 1960, Time magazine cautiously reported on a mysterious dark object orbiting Earth. The article was brief, restrained, and carefully worded, but its existence alone was enough to spark speculation. The public was told not to worry. Experts suggested it might be debris from an undisclosed launch or a misidentified rocket component. But behind closed doors, the uncertainty lingered. There were no records to support these explanations. The object did not fit known profiles. And worst of all, it seemed to predate many of the launches it was supposedly associated with. Then the story took a turn that pushed it beyond Cold War paranoia and into something far older. Researchers began looking backward instead of forward. They revisited historical radio experiments, and one name surfaced repeatedly: Nikola Tesla. In the late 1800s, Tesla claimed he had detected strange, repeating radio signals while conducting experiments in Colorado Springs. He described them as deliberate, intelligent, and not originating from Earth. At the time, his claims were dismissed as eccentric delusions. Tesla was a visionary, but also a man ahead of his time, often misunderstood. Yet, when viewed through the lens of the Black Knight mystery, his statements became chilling. What if Tesla had not been imagining things? What if he had been detecting signals reflected or transmitted by an object already in orbit? Decades later, Scientists analyzing long-delay radio echoes encountered a similar puzzle. Radio signals transmitted from Earth were returning seconds later, far longer than expected if they had simply bounced off the moon. In the 1970s, researcher Duncan Lunnon proposed a controversial explanation. He suggested that these echoes might be reflections from an extraterrestrial probe orbiting Earth. When he analyzed the signal patterns, he claimed they formed a star map pointing to the constellation Boötes, approximately 13,000 light-years away. If his interpretation was even partially correct, the implications were staggering. It would mean that an advanced civilization had sent a probe to observe Earth long before modern human civilization even existed. Skeptics were quick to challenge these conclusions, and many of Lunnon's claims were later revised or withdrawn. But once an idea like that enters the public consciousness, it never fully disappears. The possibility had been introduced. The seed had been planted, and the Black Knight satellite was no longer just a Cold War anomaly. It was becoming something far more unsettling, a potential relic of an intelligence far older and far more advanced than our own. In 1998, the mystery resurfaced with renewed intensity during NASA's Space Shuttle mission STS-88. While assembling the International Space Station, astronauts captured a series of photographs showing a strange, dark, angular object floating against the backdrop of Earth. The images were sharp, clear, and official. NASA released them publicly and quickly provided an explanation. The object, they said, was a thermal blanket that had accidentally detached during the mission. A harmless piece of space debris, nothing more. Case closed. Except it wasn't. Independent analysts and space enthusiasts immediately noticed something odd. The object's shape appeared rigid, structured, and unusually complex. It did not resemble other, known debris. Its orientation seemed stable, almost controlled. Comparisons with confirmed thermal blankets raised more questions than answers. How could a loose piece of insulation maintain such a distinct form in microgravity? Why did it appear so large and defined? NASA stood by its explanation, but for many, the images felt like déjà vu. Another sighting, another dismissal, another unanswered question. Psychologically, the Black Knight satellite taps into something primal. Humans have always feared being watched. Surveillance implies judgment, control, and vulnerability. The idea that something non-human could be observing us from above challenges our sense of dominance and uniqueness. It forces us to confront the possibility that humanity is not the main character of the cosmic story, but merely one chapter among many. This discomfort often leads to denial. It is easier to explain the unknown away than to accept that we might not be alone, or worse, that we never were. From a scientific standpoint, there are plausible explanations for many elements of the Black Knight legend. Misidentified debris, sensor errors, exaggerated reports, and human pattern recognition all play a role. Science demands evidence, repeatability, and verification. And so far, no definitive proof of an extraterrestrial satellite has been presented. But the absence of proof is not proof of absence, especially when anomalies persist across decades, technologies, and independent observations. What makes the Black Knight satellite unique is not any single piece of evidence, but the way the story refuses to collapse under scrutiny. It adapts, it evolves, it reappears. Each attempt to explain it seems to leave something behind, like a shadow that doesn't quite match the object casting it. And perhaps that is why the mystery endures. It exists in the uncomfortable space between what we know and what we are willing to accept. Today, Earth's orbit is crowded with thousands of satellites, fragments, and abandoned machines. The sky has never been noisier. And yet, in that noise, something could still be hiding. Something ancient, quiet, and patient. If the Black Knight satellite exists, it does not need to reveal itself. It has already achieved something remarkable. It has made humanity look up and question its place in the universe. In the end, the Black Knight satellite may be nothing more than a collection of misunderstandings and coincidences, stitched together by our fascination with the unknown. Or it may be one of the most important discoveries we have ever brushed aside. a silent observer, left behind by a civilization that wanted to watch a young planet grow, evolve, and perhaps one day reach out. And that leaves us with one final question. If tomorrow we discovered undeniable proof that something has been watching us from above for thousands of years, would we be ready to know the truth? Or would we do what we have always done when faced with something too large, too old, and too unsettling to understand, and simply look away?